Listen, if you don't hear anything else today, hear this. A man will only value you to the level you value yourself, not your beauty, not your body, not your words. Your standards, your boundaries, your self-respect, that's what sets the price on your presence. And the truth is, most women don't lose a man, they lose their value in front of him first. Let me break it down. First, overgiving without receiving. Let's slow this down, because this is where most people lose themselves without even realizing it. You walk into a situation with a good heart, pure intentions. You want to love, to support, to give. And there's nothing wrong with that until you start giving to someone who hasn't earned access to that level of you. You show up like a wife when he's still deciding if he even wants to be consistent. You're checking on him every day. You're making time no matter how busy you are. You're listening to his problems, encouraging his dreams, being his peace, his comfort, his escape. You're giving him emotional security while he's still giving you uncertainty. And in your mind, you think, if I just show him how real I am, how loyal I am, how good I am, he'll step up. But life doesn't work like that. Because when you give everything too soon, you remove the mystery, the effort, the pursuit. You skip the process that builds value. And instead of him rising to meet you, he gets comfortable where he is. Let me tell you something powerful. People don't value what comes easy. They value what requires effort, time, and consistency. When you overgive, you train him to expect more while doing less. You set a standard where your presence feels normal, not special. And once something feels normal, it stops being appreciated. It's like handing someone the keys to a house they didn't build, didn't earn, didn't invest in. At first, they're excited. But over time, they take it for granted, not because you're not valuable, but because they didn't have to work to understand your value. And here's where it gets deeper. Overgiving is often rooted in the fear of losing someone, so you try to secure them by pouring more, doing more, being more. But the irony is, the more you overextend yourself, the more you lower your own worth in the process, because value isn't just about what you give. It's about what you withhold until it's deserved. You have to learn to give in layers. Time should be earned. Access should be earned. Your energy should be protected. Because the right person won't be pushed away by your standards. They'll be drawn to them. So don't rush to prove your worth. Don't empty yourself to fill someone else. And don't play the role of something permanent in a situation that's still temporary. Because when you give slowly, intentionally, and wisely, you don't just keep your value. You make it undeniable. Second, ignoring disrespect and calling it patience. This one right here, it's dangerous because it doesn't feel wrong at first. It feels like you're being understanding, mature, calm. You tell yourself you're not trying to be too much, not trying to pressure him, not trying to create problems where there aren't any. But let's be real, deep down you see it. You see the delayed replies that don't match his online activity. You feel the inconsistency. One day he's all in, the next day he disappears. You notice the lack of effort, the broken promises, the bare minimum energy. And instead of addressing it, you soften it. You say, maybe he's just busy. Maybe he's going through something. Maybe I'm overthinking. No, you're not overthinking. You're over-accepting. There's a difference between patience and self-neglect. Patience is giving someone time to show consistency. Disrespect is when they consistently show you they don't value your time and you still stay quiet. Every time you ignore something that doesn't sit right with your spirit, you send a silent message, this is okay. And people don't listen to what you say, they respond to what you allow. So when you let the late replies slide, he keeps replying late. When you accept inconsistency, he stays inconsistent. When you ignore the lack of effort, he gives you even less. Because why would he rise when you've already lowered the bar? Let me tell you something powerful. Standards don't work if they're not enforced. You can say you want respect all day long, but if your actions say, I'll stay even when I'm disrespected, then your words mean nothing. And once someone realizes that you're not going anywhere, they stop trying to do better. And here's the hardest truth. You're not just teaching him how to treat you. You're teaching yourself what you think you deserve. Every time you stay silent, you shrink your own voice. Every time you excuse poor behavior, you normalize it. Every time you choose him over your self-respect, you lose a piece of yourself. And slowly, without noticing, you go from being someone with standards to someone who just hopes things will improve. But hope is not a strategy. if something feels off. It's your responsibility to address it, not with anger, not with desperation, but with clarity and confidence. And if the behavior doesn't change, you don't beg, you don't chase, you remove yourself. Because the right person won't need constant reminders to respect you. They'll do it naturally. So stop calling it patience when it's really fear of confrontation. Stop making excuses for behavior that hurts you. And stop giving chances to someone who keeps giving you reasons to walk away. Because the moment you require respect and mean it, everything about how you're treated will change. Third, chasing instead of attracting. Now this is where everything shifts, because the moment you start chasing, you step out of your power without even realizing it. At first, it feels harmless. You're just showing interest, right? Sending that extra text, checking in first, making the effort to keep the conversation alive. But slowly, it turns into something else. You start thinking about him more than he thinks about you. You start initiating more than he does. You start explaining yourself just to be understood. And before you know it, you're no longer connecting, you're convincing. You're trying to earn a place in his life that should be given freely. You overthink every message. Did I say too much? You double text when he goes quiet. You adjust your behavior, your tone, even your personality, just to keep his attention. That's not attraction. That's pursuit from a place of insecurity. Let me tell you something real. When you chase, you remove the space for him to come toward you. You answer every question before he even has to ask. You give attention before he earns it. You show availability without requiring effort. And people naturally value what they have to move toward, not what moves toward them. So the more you chase it, the less he feels the need to. And here's the part nobody talks about. Chasing doesn't just change how he sees you, it changes how you see yourself. Because when you're constantly trying to prove your worth, deep down you start believing that you're not enough as you are, that you have to do more, be more, give more, just to be chosen. But high-value energy doesn't operate like that. High-value energy is calm. It's grounded. It knows its worth without announcing it. It doesn't rush. It doesn't force. And it definitely doesn't beg for attention. It attracts by being, not by chasing. It says, this is who I am. Meet me here. And if someone doesn't, it doesn't panic. It walks away. That's power. Because the truth is, the right person won't need to be chased. They'll naturally lean in. They'll match your effort. They'll show up with consistency, not confusion. So if you find yourself doing all the work, holding all the conversations, carrying all the emotional weight, pause. Ask yourself, am I being chosen or am I trying to be chosen? Because there's a difference. Stop overgiving your attention to someone who gives you half of theirs. Stop explaining your value to someone who should recognize it. And stop running after something that isn't running toward you. Because the moment you stop chasing, you create space for what's truly meant for you to find you. And that's when attraction becomes effortless and undeniable, and fourth, losing yourself to keep him. This one cuts deep because it doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, quietly, piece by piece. At the beginning, you're you, confident, expressive, full of life. You laugh loudly, you speak your mind, you do the things that make you feel alive. That's who he was drawn to in the first place. But somewhere along the way, you start adjusting. You stop doing certain things because you think he might not like them. You hold back your opinions to avoid conflict. You tone yourself down so you don't seem too much. You start prioritizing his comfort over your authenticity. And you don't even notice it at first, because in your mind, you're doing it for the relationship. You tell yourself, this is what compromise looks like. You think you're being supportive, understanding, flexible. But let's tell the truth. There's a difference between compromise and self-abandonment. Compromise is when two people meet in the middle. Self-abandonment is when you keep moving and he stays exactly where he is. You start losing your routines. The things that once made you happy don't happen as often anymore. Your world slowly starts revolving around him, his schedule, his moods, his needs. And the more you shrink yourself to fit into his life, the more invisible you become in your own. Here's the harsh truth most people don't want to hear. When you abandon yourself, you teach him that you're optional in your own life. Because if you don't prioritize your time, your happiness, your voice, why would he? If you're willing to silence your needs just to keep the peace, he learns that your needs aren't that important to begin with. And over time, The very things that made you attractive, your confidence, your individuality, your spark, start to fade. Not because he took it from you, but because you slowly handed it over. And then one day you look up and realize you don't even feel like yourself anymore. You're exhausted, drained, unfulfilled. Not because you gave love, but because you gave up you. Let me remind you of something powerful. The right person doesn't require you to disappear to be loved. They don't need you to shrink, to silence yourself, or to sacrifice your identity just to stay. In fact, the right person is inspired by your independence, your confidence, your sense of self. So don't trade who you are for temporary comfort. Don't dim your light just to make someone else feel secure. And don't lose your voice trying to keep someone who isn't afraid of losing you. Because the moment you choose yourself, fully, unapologetically, you don't just protect your value. You become unforgettable. Now listen closely, because this is where it all comes together. Your value is not something a man gives you, it's something you set and protect every single day. The moment you stop overgiving, stop tolerating disrespect, stop chasing, and stop losing yourself, you shift everything. Not just how he sees you, but how you see yourself. Because the truth is, the right man doesn't need to be convinced, chased, or managed. He recognizes value, respects boundaries, and meets you where you stand. So stop lowering your standards just to keep someone in your life. Stop proving your worth to people who haven't earned access to it. Choose yourself. Stand firm. Walk away when necessary. Because when you truly know your value, you don't fear losing anyone. You only fear losing yourself. And that's the power that changes everything.